right, as I promised you earlier on, we're now in conversation with the South African Communist Party leader. This is because of a latest letter, I suppose, an open letter that they have written to the ANC saying, call your deployee to order, that being Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, following some utterances he made during a summit around the NHI. SACP General Secretary Solly Mapaila joins us now in studio for more on that. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
We, of course, know that there is a view and a resolution in the African National Congress that the NHI bill goes ahead. At some point, they resigned, or was he suspended, or he resigned, or he stepped down. Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize said, whether they like it or not, it's going ahead, right? And we were at that point where modalities and all sorts of other issues around the funding, the budget settings, and so on and so forth were being discussed to say it's going ahead. Of course, there are various other voices who are saying, well, if this thing goes ahead, we've got hospitals that are a mess. So, yes, we'll have the NHI, but people won't have hospitals to go to. Then, recently, the finance minister is in some kind of a summit of a publication, and he kind of repeats that kind of messaging. Why do you find trouble with that?
Firstly, is that we want to express our appreciation for the Parliament to pass the bill on NHI. Because national health insurance is going to guarantee all South Africans access to good health, including refurbishment of hospitals. It should be an inclusive process. So for anyone who defies ordinary people of this country to have better access to health, it's inhuman. But nonetheless, ANC National Conference in 2007 adopted the decision to implement the national health insurance. It took so long to be implemented, and now we want to retract from these decisions. We have called for public health much earlier than that. We were the first to go on the public streets to campaign for an inclusive national health system for the country, which is the national health insurance. Yeah. So in this regard, when it's supposed to be implemented, we have seen goalposts being shifted by government and different entities, largely because of influence by capital. Because the capitalist forces, during this period when national health insurance was delayed, there's been mushrooming of private hospitals, which are also going to benefit out of national health insurance. In any case, the public should need to know that as it is, the public sector funds the private sector more than it funds public sector health care system. Yeah. Public health, that is public finances, funds private sector health care than it funds public sector health care. This is the primary question. This is what needs to be resolved, and we cannot accept that. Now, for the general public to be bullied by a minority few who benefit from private capital against the people who must benefit from all good health across the country is just unreasonable. And now for it to be expressed by a minister who's supposed to basically allocate funds, it shocks us. That's why we've written this letter. But we've also communicated with the ANC, as well as our comrades in COSATU. We'll be having a discussion in this regard. As I understand, it's scheduled for Monday. So we'll certainly find time to have a discussion. But we are extremely unhappy about the turning of events and the manner in which this thing is being implemented. Not even just about the manner. We do not want the retraction of public health insurance. It must be implemented.
So the minister says, no, I fully support universal health. That's been articulated by the ANC. He says, I'm not in opposition to that.
It's rhetorical.
And he says, I support that, but I also support that the way in which it will be funded for it to be successful will be through contributions that are made from society, so through a national health insurance. He says, I'm not against that. I'm not saying that should not happen. But I am saying that while we are working out the modalities, which are seemingly quite complicated, there is right now an urgent need to have our hospitals ready and functioning, because people are already flocking there. He even makes an example of saying that, for example, in one instance, he was told that there was an accident and 21 people were in that accident. And out of the 21, 19 actually not South African foreign nationals, and only 2 were South Africans, just to express the extent to which the system is already under pressure. And he's saying, in terms of priorities, I would want us to ensure that at least we put 200 billion to upgrade those facilities that we need right now. And that's the money that we need to find right now.
There are no stages regarding this question. The refurbishment of health facilities, as well as the introduction of national health insurance, or for people to have access to universal health, that must be guaranteed. So the other cannot come after the other. In other words, he's asking for people to postpone being sick. It's just irrational. But the bottom line is that he has embraced a neoliberal economic posture to health. And this is where we're even a fundamental problem with his attitude. It's not only even on this, it's on other areas as well. For instance, he speaks about this thing on national health insurance. On the one hand, he had issued a letter or through his DG stopping government from involving in any infrastructure expansion or even employment of workers. So this is just a play game for him to the people of this country. And we reject that with the contempt that it deserves. It's actually neoliberal rubbish that has been thrown into the public for the public to be focused on this thing while they are going ahead and consolidate private healthcare system so that it can never, public healthcare can never be an alternative for all people in this country. We demand national health insurance and we'll fight for it. We fought for it, by the way. Yeah. We were the first to go into the national streets for many years fighting for this. Now that it has come and it's going to benefit the people, the ministers now become the spokesperson of capital. There's nothing else than just he's representing a few interest groups in order to divert the introduction of national health insurance. Because in any case, if you were to put, let's say, in his own stages, for instance, why has he been budgeting this all along? His task is to budget this national health insurance funds. His task is to not use the existing neoliberal macroeconomic framework that imposes austerity on public infrastructure and public needs, because he continues to serve the public interest. The core debate is, you need to be asking him, or ask a Minister of Health, the current Minister of Health or former Minister of Health, how much they spend for as a public health for private health care, that is for private hospitals, as opposed to public health care. He wants us to continue in that particular direction. That's the direction that we are rejecting with the contempt that it deserves.
So it says that the ANC position is a broad policy position, but
that is manipulated.
Of course, the issue now comes with the mechanics of it, the technical requirements. This is what's putting him at loggerheads with the Department of Health. For example, things like he mentions police and their POMED, to say now these folks have got to be off POMED, and this is going to put you in conflict with the police, to say will they want to be off their POMED?
No, I mean those are minor issues. They are not the core of the NHI. The core of the NHI is universal access to better health care by all South Africans. And it's a commitment that the ruling party and the ruling alliance has accepted. His task as minister is to implement this. If there are problems, he should have come to the party and say, there are the following problems, like the previous ministers had, which led to the postponement of implementation of this. But we cannot continue to accept all these kind of reasons, unreasonable reasons, so to speak. Yeah. So it is high time that the deployees representing the African National Congress interpret the ANC policies proper, and commit themselves to implement what they've agreed, what we have given to the public. For instance, this matter, the ANC committed to the public of this country that is going ahead. Yeah. Now a minister changes the entire decision. Yeah. So if we allow this kind of behavior, one minister after the other, they never care what the ANC position or the alliance position is. So we cannot be party to this kind of shenanigans. Basically, is playing a nice game to the enemy of development of a successful public sector system, so that the public sector can be denigrated and insulted. But when you go to countries that tells them to do so, whether it's in Europe, you have a thriving public health care system. You can go to any other hospital. They are almost some as the same as the private hospitals here.
Yeah.
When we're supposed to upgrade ours to that level and take care of our people, ministers of state are reneging on agreements precisely because some capitalists said, no, this is a social spending. It doesn't bring profit. You cannot do it. Remove it. It's an influence of the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD countries on our government policy. And for that matter, the Ministry of Finance must be disciplined properly, because over the years, that ministry turned itself into an overall government policy ministry, which is not necessarily the case.
So, SACP General Secretary Solly Mapaila with us, they've written a hot letter, but they're saying they're also going to meet next week, Monday, to say, call your deployee in government to order. One would say, you know, ministers generally feel like they are a law unto themselves, for lack of a better word, but they're all powerful. And just yesterday we were hearing one of your members of the SACP, the court saying, you must sell mango. And he says, no, I will not be bullied. That's Pravin Gordhan. What do you make of that as the SACP?
No, firstly, Pravin Gordhan is not a member of the Communist Party. He used to be.
Oh, he's no longer?
Before the unbanning, he used to be. I long left the Communist Party. But look, the bottom line is that the ministerial system in South Africa is executive authority system. And that's a fundamental weakness of our state system. That's why you have a minister who comes into office from the same party, replacing another minister from the same organization, changes policy and direction and focus of the previous minister. Just on fundamentals of policy. And we've been regurgitating one policy after the other on same matters, precisely because of these weaknesses. They've got executive authority. That is why they have to please. They have to, firstly, even the president somehow negotiates power with ministers. Because by constitution, they are accountable. They are not accountable per se to the president. They are accountable to the constitution. They are held responsible. And if the president doesn't want what the particular minister is doing, he can remove him or her, because he has that right. That is one of his major he appoints and disappoints ministers. So in this regard, we have had a malady, a crisis, basically of collective leadership of the party that has not asserted its authority over its deployees. None of those would be there without the African National Congress as a leading, as the one that deploys them in government.
Yeah. But we saw coming out of Nasrec, they said they're deploying Marupini to go and hold deployees accountable there in terms of implementing ANC policy. Is that arrangement not bearing any fruit?
Well, I guess it's too early. As you know, we established this division with then Collins Chairman when he came into office, 2009. To set up this division of monitoring and evaluation, which was initially our proposal as a Communist Party. But they devalued it on implementation. The idea was that we could use this system to look into performance of individual ministers against particular forms of targeted development. Now we've had many other things, the SIM system and everything else that are convoluted, difficult to pin down to whether this person is successful or not. But social development on the ground, that is the crisis of social development on the ground, has proven that the system we are using is not effective. That is why we have poor services in communities, the crisis in communities expanding, whilst we have even this kind of ministry. It's not a new ministry. Marupin is just taking, Comrade Marupin is just taking responsibility now, yes, at least as an official of the ANC. But we've had ministers who are all accountable to the collective of the executive, and this position has been there. So it has not given us the desired effect. So we have not yet engaged with the new tools, if she's bringing in new tools in this regard. The bottom line is the African National Congress and its allies should have the capacity to monitor implementation of their policies by those they've deployed in government, rather than have those in government dictating to the party what to do. On the contrary, we have seen this, where, for instance, the dog wags the tail, or instead of the tail wagging the dog, because they go into the state system, they've got huge resources, they visit various countries, bring in policies that are not applicable to our own conditions. and force them here. I'll just give you an example. How many times we've changed policy on education? So we'll keep on changing forever. The new minister comes, changes. So it's a bad posture of a governing party unable to control its own deployees in terms of the direction of the mandate they've given to the people. If you go and read, take the ANC manifesto, which is what we have sold to the masses, for them to elect us into office. If you take that, and which is what we in the alliance supported them, if you take that against every single ministry, you'll see major weaknesses there on implementation. On this, the health sector, for instance, the previous manifesto, the current manifesto that we're running with, actually even called for employment of no less than 50,000 community healthcare workers. Yeah. Even before we had the crisis of COVID. Yeah. By the time COVID came, we should have actually even said, we were delaying this thing, here's a crisis of this magnitude, let's respond to this crisis in this way. All of this thing, yes, that's a problem.
For those healthcare
because
workers?
They work in silos. And that Ministry of Monitoring and Evaluation should also have to consolidate that these institutions do not work necessarily in silos. They work congruently and implement the party line. But in this case, they don't do it. Yeah. You go to other areas across the world, it's done. The party that is elected into office must implement its policies in government.
We're running out of time. I wanted to get your views quickly on this urgent meeting between the SAP, the President and the Minister of Finance. And it was largely, I mean, if you look at it from high end, the trajectory of the budget deficit. And of course, that then spirals into all the other issues around social spending and whatnot, and where we need to cut.
Well, I don't think it was a meeting. It's reported to have been a meeting, but basically it was a monolithic session. Because all of those have got a singular idea with regard to economic posture and policy. From the Reserve Bank, we have called for expanded role of the Reserve Bank in our country, the change of macroeconomic policy, which has been neoliberal and capitalist, doesn't fit our conditions over the years. In fact, the biggest crisis in the alliance is this question. So the Minister of Finance, in terms of the Constitution, has the right to instruct the Reserve Bank to follow, or even to grow the economy, to create jobs. But they've been monolithic in the policy space, inflation targeting, they pay lip service to job creation. So the President himself has not proven himself either better in terms of a different economic trajectory, even though the ANC guarantees him as the leader to be the custodian of the ANC economic policy, which is mixed policy system. We're literally implementing a neoliberal capitalist economic system unashamedly, and is not relevant for this country.
They will not be able to, in that sense, raise the investment that is required. So the SG of the ANC
is to sell the country.
The ANC has been working on that to create the kind of jobs that we need.
No, it's to sell the country. We have put proposals, even on finding money. There's too much money in this country. I have said in one of the forums, I can't remember, it was in one of your sessions, Tabo, I invite the President, I invite the Minister of Finance, I invite the Governor of the Reserve Bank to a debate, even if it's a public debate, on alternative forms of money in this country. It's untrue that we don't have money. It's precisely because they are locked in a monolithic form of neoliberal trajectory of planning and implementation that they can't see even other forces of money. Heterodox economics have made presentations of various forms on alternative for this country. They are being ignored because the IMF and the World Bank are calling the shot of policy sovereignty, policy space in our country. We can't retain our own policy sovereignty. We need to reclaim policy sovereignty and determine our own destiny as a country. We cannot allow the country to be run in this form. And that is the reason why we in the Communist Party, we have said, whilst we remain in alliance with the ANC and support the work of government, will remain critical, particularly of this kind of postures, even where solutions are on the table, but they are being ignored.
Solly Mapaila, much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on. That is the Secretary General of the SACP.